So when the Amazing Digital Circus was introduced to the world in October of 2023, it took almost the entire internet by storm. Because not only did the pilot of the show get over 100 million views in its first month, which as of this video is 4 times that, but also within the same time frame it already had over 1,000 entries on that one website, and some Harvard analysts predicted that if it kept going that way it may have contested even the greats of that website like My Little Pony and Overwatch, and once again it had only been out for a month at this point and people were already applying their bespoke fetishes to the characters.
I think I might have the dude, I'm gonna What the
But everybody was talking about the show when the pilot was released and when it first came out. There were such things like memes, especially the one involving the soundtrack. There was even a popular misinformation campaign that Jack Black was going to voice a character, and there was countless videos published attempting to analyze why just the pilot of this show was so successful. Yes, that even includes myself when I used to use Minecraft gameplay as B-roll footage, but it was early days, come on. This type of instant success and widespread interest in a series, even from just a pilot, especially produced from an indie company like Glitch Productions that mainly released all of their animations on YouTube, wasn't heard of around this time. Yes, I know, Has Been Hotel existed around this time, but we're not going to talk about that today.
When I say you are fucking 20 guys before lunch, you say, yes, Valentino. When I say you better...
Not the voice breaking! Blake, why do you have to do such a good job with voice acting? Oh my god.
Wait, yes, Val. Go.
Where's my goddamn fucking fly swatter? Where is it?
But anyway, a community quickly formed around this show. Fans that were interested and excited to see the next installments in this series, in some cases, maybe a bit too excited.
I am the person that cried over Has Been Hotel, and after today, I will probably be known as the person that cried over the Amazing Digital Circus.
But this increase in attention resulted in what I like to call the My Hero Academia effect, where a show or type of media becomes so popular that some members of the community become a bit too interested, or maybe a little one could say obsessed, where it's the only thing they talk about, it's the only thing they think about. They may even create such things as ships that make no sense at all and will never be canon, but will still defend them vehemently. And if you utter a single syllable of criticism regarding the piece of media they love so much, they will either crucify you or launch a range of slurs at you. And that's not even mentioning the pain the creators of the show have to go through if they have fans like this and they don't create something that every part of the community is satisfied with. And in most cases, this minority of the community is so loud they often become the representation of the whole fan base for this type of media, especially for those that are outside of the community. Even though the majority of said community are probably normal people that just enjoy the show, and this small percentage of hardcore fans are ruining everything for everybody else. And the Amazing Digital Circus did see a bit of this at the start, but it was more towards the end of the series, it was more prominent, and it most definitely wasn't as bad as My Hero Academia, or dare I say Has Been Hotel, but it was still there. However, after the success of the pilot, the show continued to do very well. They released more episodes as the years went on, it garnered more and more popularity and attention. Every episode got millions of views, it was talked about everywhere, it became mainstream, and this show as a whole was a huge middle finger to the animation industry at the time. And in the current day, the show has come to an end. It had a cinema release generating 20 million on its 4-day domestic opening. It got a Fortnite collab, if that amounts to anything in the current day. It became somewhat of a cultural icon throughout its entire run, and the fans, despite the overwhelming success of the show, some would lose their shit. resulting in one of the creators seemingly stepping away due to what many thought was fan dissatisfaction with certain elements of the last episode, and backlash because they released said finale in cinema and people leaked the ending and the creator didn't say the correct thing in response apparently. Some of the voice actors even had their history dragged up with heavy accusations levied against them, and the community, despite being viewed as somewhat calm in the years leading up to this, especially compared to other communities, was now up in arms, divided, and just all around a mess. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, both the community and the show, and what nuclear bomb went off causing all this ruckus. But before we get into any of that, we need to know what the Digital Circus is and how it got so popular.
Specifically, I believe that we can use the religious imagery to get a pretty good idea of what Pomni's story arc is going to be. You see, Pomni is Digital Circus's parallel to Jesus Christ.
Now obviously there are spoilers in this video for the Digital Circus, its plot, and the ending, so if you haven't seen any of that and you don't want to be spoiled, leave now. But let's be honest, most of you probably got spoiled from the leaks anyway. To start with, the Amazing Digital Circus was created, written, and directed by Gooseworx, someone that even prior to the success of the Digital Circus already had a laundry list of achievements and titles under their belt. They worked on popular shows like Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss and published their own independent stories, music, and illustrations, which is something they've apparently been doing for a decade and a half, which includes their activity on their official YouTube channel, with earlier uploads including things like Grabbed by the Ghoulies Orchestra remakes. So Gooseworx definitely knew fucking ball. But Goose has been doing everything from music production to creating and animating their own stories for years, to say the least. They were so good at creating stories that they even somewhat predicted one of the outcomes in the finale of the Digital Circus a decade prior. And they also somewhat predicted the outcome of their fanbase. Goose started to see major success in 2019 and the years following, as she not only had the opportunity to work on Hell of a Boss and the pilot for Has Been Hotel, and was well acquainted with the career of both shows, but she also saw success in her independent work published on her YouTube channel, with animations like Little Runmo released in 2019, Elaine the Bounty Hunter released in 2020, and Elaine Gets Adopted released in 2021, to name a few. And she did most of the animation herself, receiving millions of views and high praise for these projects. Jumping to late 2022, she already had an impressive portfolio, and Glitch Productions would take notice, inviting her to their studio to pitch 3 shows, with one of them being the Digital Circus, which would see the release of the pilot the following year. But even before the Amazing Digital Circus, Glitch Productions was already somewhat popular. They started off as a YouTube channel under the name SMG4 that made things like Mario animations, which is briefly referenced in the ending moments of the Digital Circus. They would eventually transition into animating their own projects, founding the Glitch Production YouTube channel, releasing the teaser for their first official animation in 2019, which was Meta Runners, and it continued for multiple seasons. However, they would see more success with their next release. No, it wasn't the Amazing Digital Circus, but Murder Drones. It was introduced in late 2021 and ran for only 8 episodes, with said episodes releasing occasionally all the way up to 2024, which is a format their next project would also follow. This would be a very successful series on their channel, resulting in them reaching over 1 million subscribers in late 2022, because a lot of people really enjoyed Murder Drones, from its animation quality, especially surrounding fight scenes, to things like its characters, its story, and the significant gaps between each episode that only made the anticipation and excitement for the release of future episodes greater. It was quite well received overall, although some didn't entirely enjoy the end of the series, but for an indie production uploaded to YouTube, it was very impressive and put Glitch Productions somewhat on the map. And fans were eager for the release of the next series Glitch would be producing, and they most definitely wouldn't be disappointed, as the Amazing Digital Circus was their next project, and the pilot alone, as I've reiterated multiple times, was enough to captivate a majority of the internet. It had animation that would only improve in later episodes, a range of characters that were fairly interesting, and a plot that hooked people within the first episode. The show starts with Pomni, someone that came across a headset that most think was due to her hobby of exploring abandoned buildings, and upon putting it on, she had been transported to the circus, a digital place controlled by an AI going by the name of Kane. Pomni does try to take the headset off, but it proves unsuccessful, and she's greeted by other people that also put the headset on and were now trapped in this digital realm, with the only important character being Kinga. Somebody out there is already writing a slur targeted towards me for making that joke. Pomni can't remember her name, what she looked like in the real world, and certain things about herself, which is the same for the other characters. However, it is revealed in later episodes that they basically have all their memories, like past jobs, hobbies, and experiences, but nothing about their identity. But now she's in the digital circus, she now, along with others, except for Zubul most times, are forced to go on daily adventures that Kane creates for them, which most times ends up with one of the characters being severely traumatized, and Kane only forces them to do this in order to apparently keep their minds active and entertained, to make it the chance of them going insane from boredom and abstracting, which is where they have mentally deteriorated to the point where they glitch out, turning into a monster that has lost all their memories and sense of who they are, and are also extremely hostile. This is the only way people can basically die in the circus, and there is no going back once you abstract. And the only way to deal with them is to lock them in dark areas that seem to calm them down. Some have theorized that abstraction is a metaphor for which, yep, sounds about right. But although Kane apparently puts them on these missions to benefit them, most characters just think he puts them on these missions to torment them in some way, and they don't really work that well since a lot of people have previously abstracted anyway. But it's not entirely Kane's fault. The character Jax is basically responsible for killing 2 people and apparently fumbling 2 baddies. That basically is what the digital circus is, and Pomni from day one is trying to find an escape from their digital prison, and through every episode you slowly learn more things about the circus, and more importantly, the characters, like their past and key events in their lives, but you never really outright get the whole story. Like, there's only 1 or 2 occasions before the ending where they just drop a character's lore on you, and by the end you still don't get the entire picture. There is still more questions, like how did every character get into the circus, or how is the circus still even running after all this time? And that's probably one of the best things about the digital circus, because you may get answers to one thing that leaves even more questions, and most times you don't get outright told the answers. You either have to piece things together or make educated guesses. But that is basically the Amazing Digital Circus, and the story is quite good. I can see why a lot of people like it, and it does deserve the attention it has received. My favourite episode, because I'm totally not a LARPer and totally didn't only recently watch the entire series in my spare time, but my favourite episode is Fast Food Masquerade, primarily because when looking into Gooseworx, it was said she worked for 5 years at McDonald's before she got fired, and you can almost tell throughout that episode her experience working in fast food has bled into that episode, and it probably made previous fast food employees watching it relive their own personal Vietnam. I'm honestly curious if Gooseworx has like PTSD or something from that one beeping sound found in like every McDonald's. Even though it's a good show, not like the best show ever, let's calm down a little, it's not beating Teen Titans Go anytime soon. And every now and again there is dialogue that can be, dare I say, a bit corny.
I don't care about you or anyone else in this circus in the slightest. End of story. You are my playthings.
But even though it saw great success and was highly praised throughout its run, it still had quite a big problem with its fans, especially nearing the end of the series.
Pomni! Can you please sniff your feet, please? Please! Don't leave me!
So as the Amazing Digital Circus got more popular and the amount of fans surrounding it grew and grew, obviously this sometimes results in the occurrence of fans that are a bit too obsessed with the form of media in question, to the point where they take said media and things surrounding it a bit too seriously to a delusional level. And as said, this happened to the reputations of the My Hero Academia and has-been hotel communities. And this involves activities like going through the past of people associated with the show and dragging up past situations which nobody had a problem with initially, and most of the things dragged up were mainly jokes or even edgy jokes made by members of the show that no one had a problem with at the time, until they were brought to the forefront of the internet years later. Because apparently if you like a piece of content, it means that the people behind it have to agree with you on everything. They're not allowed to even joke about certain things even in their past years ago. And if they go against any of that, you will have to vocalize your disappointment on platforms saying you're no longer supporting them or their content, even though you probably will continue watching it, and you also have to make sure to tag them in that same post. And you have to make a big deal out of the situation, assigning the most extreme labels with barely any evidence. Also, if something happens with the show you don't like, or in most cases it's something that's not even the fault of people directly involved with the show, you must go out of your way to blame them entirely, and overall you have to just make a big shit in your adult diaper about the whole thing. That's basically how every fanbase with a bad reputation functions. Well, that, or they get so obsessed they can't differentiate fiction from reality, or they do the opposite of what I just described a minute ago and go on the offense, attacking anyone that says anything bad about the show. And to be honest, the Amazing Digital Circus saw most of everything I just described. First came the accusations against the voice actors of the show, specifically the voice of Jax, Michael Kovac, and the voice of Zubul, Ashley Nicholas. And this allegation was sourced from a live stream these two did together way before the Digital Circus in 2019, almost 7 years ago. And people were claiming they were racist from one clip from said live stream, where the voice of Zubul reads out someone's name in the chat and it sounds like the N-word.
Notice you, Senpai. Aaron. Sure, we notice you. Mega? Hey, Saber!
Hey, sprinkle cake, that's what I thought was said too.
Use letters to spell the longest word you can.
She did not. It just sounded like it.
Did it? I said you fucking idiot.
It sounded like another word.
No.
So they say N-E-G-A, which sounds like the N-word, and I did have to censor it because YouTube is YouTube, but they don't actually say the N-word. And later on, continuing with the joke, in the game they were playing, they would make a shirt with the word she said on it, and they would all laugh and vote for it.
Oh, thank you, Daddy, for the vote.
Versus?
And that is it. Personally, I think this is like making a mountain out of a molehill. I don't think they are racist. All they did was read a chatter's name that sounded like the N-word, laughed about it, integrated it into their game, then laughed about it some more. There was no malice there from what I saw. It was a joke, and just to reiterate, it was 7 years ago. Come on. And plus, that's like every Jack in the Box game between friends. There is always a slur referenced. Anyway. But despite this, some fans did make a big deal about it. I think one fan that got Jax's voice actor's autograph tattooed on their skin, which in my opinion, I don't know why you would ever do that. But after this drama came out, they would start panicking and post about how much of a mistake they had made and how much they wanted to remove it. And around that time, one person at a Glitch event started spamming the word they said all those years ago at their stall, which led to Glitch making an official statement about it. They even roped Gooseworx into this because she had previously referenced the event, so some also assumed she was racist due to this. And with all the attention this situation was getting, the voice actors would respond, where they would apologise for even making a joke about such a thing and apologise for any harm that was caused by it. But they would also add that people around this time were sending them very disgusting things in response. Gooseworx would also respond to this in a very colourful way, to say the least.
Your life is nothing. You serve zero purpose. You yourself now.
And this wouldn't be the first time this happened, because people also went through Gooseworx's old tweets and Tumblr posts with some from an entire decade ago, and they use things like edgy jokes and satirical humor as evidence to prove she's into things like incest and is a misogynist. In fact, it was even believed Gooseworx deleted her accounts on places like Reddit because people were mad at her for simply saying on a live stream that Jax and Pomni are the two main characters of the show.
Going into this series, I never expected one of the things that people would get mad at me for would be making the show focus on the two main characters. I was like, oh, I didn't even know you could get mad about that. It's like building up the show to be about Pomni and Jax. It's like, oh, people are actually really upset about that. I'm sorry.
That's all they said. People were mad the creator of the show made an offhand comment about their show, and that two characters are actually the main characters of said show instead of all the others. And they were getting so much shit flung at them, they even apparently apologized for it, but did later clarify they didn't delete their accounts down to that, it was other things. And if you thought it couldn't get even more ridiculous, it kept going, because as said, the final episode of the Amazing Digital Circus also had a cinema release before it would later be uploaded to places like YouTube and other platforms. But before the movie was released in cinema, the Brazilian Portuguese dubbed version was leaked online, which included clips of important plot points and in some cases just the whole movie spread eagle for everyone to see on things like their Twitter timeline. And fans obviously were annoyed by this. They had been waiting months for this episode and they've been watching the show for years, only for everything to be spoiled, and they would have to avoid said spoilers like landmines for the next few weeks till the movie was officially released in their local cinemas. But for whatever reason, some people wouldn't be just mad at the leakers, they would also be mad at the people who created the show, apparently criticizing them for even having a cinema release. Because if they didn't, things like this would have never happened. And things would escalate when people tried to make Gooseworx aware of the leaks, and in response, Gooseworx, this heathen, this terrible person, had the gall to not really care. And she responded by saying, and I quote, "Who cares?" Which is a fair response. What is she going to do? The leaks are already out there. She can't mind wipe all the people that have seen them or do anything about the people that have downloaded the clips and are recirculating them. Yes, her team could remove them down to copyright infringement, but even then, when one is taken down, 10 more will probably take their place. There is nothing Gooseworx could have done, and her response was fine. But after responding, some individuals for some reason didn't like the way she responded, so they once again threw their shit at her. Obviously, it's not the whole community doing this, it is the small minority that are way too obsessed with the show and, dare I say, are a bit delusional. And once again, Gooseworx did somewhat have the foresight to see this happening even before the show was released. But Gooseworx would respond to the backlash again, saying she knows people are upset about her response and she just wanted to make a show, but it's proven way more trouble than it's really worth, and she just can't keep her heart in things like this. Finishing off by saying this has gotten much bigger than her and she probably shouldn't be the figurehead of it. And this situation got so much attention, in fact, Moist Critical did a video on it.
Unfortunately, I don't see what's wrong with her response. Who cares? I don't see what's so bad about that. I don't know why people would be upset. It happens. It was out of her control. All she can do now is just be like, alright, there it is. But what if I told you that tongue Sahur's pregnant? We'll see.
But when the movie did eventually fully release, some people then got mad at Gooseworx again, but this time for things like the ending, more specifically the off-screen abstraction of Jax. Like, Gooseworx cannot win in any scenario, even if she isn't remotely involved in a situation. And I think this is why a lot of show creators and animators don't really get that involved with their communities and keep a distance. Because if you are actively involved, you are either going to be trying to make everyone happy, which may change the direction of the show and the way you wanted it to go, or you will constantly have to deal with people complaining and blaming you for everything surrounding the show that in most cases has nothing to do with you. It's probably the most mentally draining thing you could do. And with that said, Gooseworx would later respond to questions about the show, saying she's tired when asked about a season 2.
I'm tired, boss.
and she essentially passes the torch to the next Glitch production show and tells people to support that, which I think is a completely normal and human response when you've had to deal with all the people have been throwing at you. But even after that, people threw more at her, saying you only made like 9 episodes of a show, how are you tired? So in conclusion, that is the Amazing Digital Circus and its community. It's a community that for a number of years was fairly calm and wasn't that bad, but nearing the end of the series, that's when things escalated quite dramatically, and I do think it did somewhat impact the reputation of the show, especially with the release of the final episode. I think there was more focus on the drama surrounding it more than the actual show and what the indie production had accomplished. However, as said, it's not all the fans doing the things I described earlier, it's just a small minority that are far more vocal and loud who ruin it for everyone else. But this community is definitely not as bad as other communities, like Hazbin Hotel.
Have any of you guys seen a talking teddy bear?
Shh, they're about to announce the new writer for the Digital Circus episode.
And the next writer is Vivzy Pop.
The show is pretty good, and I think the people behind it have set a new bar for what an indie series can achieve. But yeah, make sure to air out your foreskin if you have one. If you don't, GG's, get f***ed, hood gang. And that's all I had to say, and bye-bye.